The Hiroshima bomb was an experimental weapon, and it was the first test.
August 6, 1945 is a turning point in history. It is the day the most destructive weapon ever assembled on Earth was introduced. The US and Japan had been participating in a bloody war in the Pacific Islands. It was to everyone's awareness that the war would last a long time unless a more powerful weapon was created. Although the atomic bomb was successful in ending World War II, its use was immoral as it indiscriminately killed thousands of innocent civilians and led to a turning point in the usage and perception of weapons of mass destruction.
The forces of Germany have surrendered to the United Nations. The flags of freedom fly all over Europe.
But those flags do not fly over East Asia. The war in the Pacific was still raging strong and the Japanese army had no intentions of giving up anytime soon. The battle in the Pacific was taking a big toll on the US as they carried out their strategy of island hopping, which is leaping from one island to the next trying to make their way closer to mainland Japan. It was very inefficient and the US desperately needed some way of ending the war quickly with the least amount of American casualties possible. The Manhattan Project was the solution to the problem. Out of fear that Nazi Germany was pursuing a powerful weapon, the US made the atomic bomb project a paramount priority and started their own research center for the development of a weapon of mass destruction. The history of the Manhattan Project begins as early as 1939, but initial efforts towards the atomic bomb began in June 1942. A man named Dr. Robert Oppenheimer was the head of the operation. Finally, after 3 years and $2 billion, the first atomic bomb had been assembled. James Franck, a physicist involved with the Manhattan Project, was also the chairman of the Committee on Political and Social Problems regarding the bomb. On June 11, 1945, about 3 months before the bombing, Franck and some other scientists produced a document known as the Franck Report. Due to their concern of immorality, the document strongly recommended that the bombs not be used on Japanese cities. However, Washington decided not to listen, and the atomic bomb proceeded without further disruption. On July 14, 1945, the world's first atomic bomb had been brought to the top-secret research facility in Los Alamos, New Mexico. Finally, on July 16, 1945, the first atomic bomb was detonated in Alamogordo, New Mexico.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Few people laughed. Few people cried. Most people were silent.
The United States now had a new weapon in their arsenal, and the use of it would depend upon one man only. That man was Harry Truman, the current President of the United States of America during that period of time. Truman was attending the Potsdam Conference in newly conquered Germany at the time of the Trinity test in Los Alamos. Also attending the conference was British Prime Minister Winston Churchill as well as the Soviet dictator Joseph Stalin. When news of the Trinity test success reached Truman, he first declared that the war would soon be over, and then hinted to Joseph Stalin that the Americans possessed a terrible new weapon. Stalin promised to join the war against Japan 3 months after the surrender of Germany. That day would be August 8, 1945. Days before August 6th, the Americans were hesitant of unleashing such a powerful bomb, and Truman decided to send warning and chance of surrender to the Japanese before their ultimate decision to drop the bomb. However, despite 2 warnings from the US, Japan made it clear that surrender was not an option. The bombing was now inevitable. The bomb named Little Boy had been brought to San Francisco and then placed on the USS Indianapolis on a 10-day journey to Tinian Islands, which was roughly 6 hours away from Japan by plane. 3 planes would be used on the mission to drop the atomic bomb. They were the Enola Gay, the Great Artiste, and Necessary Evil. Paul W. Tibbets was the head pilot of the Enola Gay, the plane in charge of dropping the atomic bomb. At 8:15 on the morning of August 6, 1945, the atomic bomb named Little Boy was dropped on Hiroshima. This would be the first atomic bomb ever used in warfare. The Little Boy was estimated to have the same blast radius as the equivalent of 20,000 tons of TNT. The design was structured in a way that was called the uranium bullet design. This design enabled a process in which a uranium bullet fired down a cylinder into a uranium target. This created a nuclear reaction that caused matter itself to split. The bomb exploded at an altitude of 1,968 feet. This was the intended height.
Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds.
The atomic bomb crushed everything in its path, making it almost certain that nobody within 800 meters of ground zero survived. It is estimated that 50,000 individuals were killed immediately at the scene, and an even larger number died of radiation in the following weeks. The shockwave tore buildings, destroying the once prosperous city of Hiroshima into a wasteland. On August 9, 1945, just 3 days after the bombing of Hiroshima, a second atomic bomb was detonated over the city of Nagasaki. American scientists did not fully understand the effects of the bomb. The radiation that ensued the bombing was unanticipated. The survivors suffered physically from cataracts, leukemia and other cancers, malformed offspring, and premature aging. Within a few months of the explosions at Hiroshima and Nagasaki, leukemia began to appear among the survivors at an abnormally high rate. This was caused by nuclear radiation. Admiral William Leahy, a strong adversary of the use of the bomb, said, "It is my opinion that the use of this barbarous weapon at Hiroshima and Nagasaki was of no material assistance in our war against Japan." Finally, on September 2, 1945, the Japanese surrendered. Due to the quick Japanese surrender, a planned invasion of Japan by the Allied nations set to occur on November 1st was cancelled. Although the bombing did succeed in ending the war, it would have been considered a war crime had the losing side used it first.
LeMay said if we'd lost the war, we'd all have been prosecuted as war criminals. And I think he's right. He, and I'd say I, were behaving as war criminals. LeMay recognized that what he was doing would be thought immoral. His side had lost.
On the 18th of July, Harry Truman and Joseph Stalin met during the Potsdam Conference. Truman casually informed Stalin that the US possessed a new weapon, but did not mention that it was atomic. However, Soviet Marshal Georgy Zhukov recalls that it was clear already then that the US government intended to use the atomic weapon for the purpose of achieving its imperialist goals from a position of strength in the Cold War. The atomic bomb was a goal that both the Americans and Soviets aspired to attain. When the bomb was used, Stalin and the Russians felt that the bomb had been targeted at them more than it was targeted at Japan. They thought that it was a warning sign from the United States. After all, Russia had joined the war against Japan in the time between the two bombs. The bomb acted as a catalyst to the beginning of the Cold War, a 44-year-long period of psychological war between the US and Soviet Union. In October 1962, the Cold War reached its peak during a 13-day period known as the Cuban Missile Crisis. With Soviet nuclear missile sites stationed in Cuba and U.S. weapon sites in Turkey, American President John F. Kennedy and Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev worked towards peaceful resolution. Kennedy and Khrushchev would come to realize the devastating results of nuclear war, and would both agree to a deal in which the Soviets would dismantle their weapon sites under the condition that the U.S. not invade Cuba.
Namely that the Soviet missile bases in Cuba are being dismantled, their missiles and related equipment are being crated, and the fixed installations at these sites are being destroyed.
There is no doubt that both leaders were clear of what happened in Hiroshima on August 6, 1945, and understanding that the nuclear war that lay just around the corner would be far more devastating, both leaders came to a decision of peace. Hiroshima has provided the world an example of the horror of nuclear weapons. A number of multilateral treaties has since been established with the aim of preventing nuclear proliferation and testing while promoting progress in nuclear disarmament. These include the Treaty of Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons and the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty.
The Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty passed Friday night.
Okay, with that story, Prime Minister Vladimir Putin says Russia is willing to abandon nuclear weapons if the United States and all other countries do the same.
To lift the specter of mass destruction, we must come together to pursue the peace and security of a world without nuclear weapons.
There is no doubt that dropping the first atomic bomb changed the course of history. After Hiroshima, the world has forever changed their view on weapons of mass destruction. These weapons of destruction are no longer seen as the ultimate solution to war, but the immorality and evil of mankind. Hiroshima has taught this world a lesson of the deep water of untested powerful weapons that humanity should never have waded into. Now a busy metropolis, Hiroshima still holds its scars from the past that tells the story of a single experiment that led history into a different direction.